Welcome to the Post-Human Podcast.
So, today's guest, relationship coach, betrayal and trauma practitioner. What a mouthful that is. I knew I was going to mess that up. Mr. J. And I love the fact that you just call yourself Mr. J. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tim.
Before I want to say anything, 20 years in the game. Absolutely amazing. I've done some minor research. Obviously, you've got a master's. You're extremely, you've got bachelor degrees. You're extremely qualified. I've got a bunch of questions here. I just want to correct it all the right way. I threw myself off guard. I threw myself off guard with that that tongue twister of a start. So yeah, obviously you've got, you're extremely qualified. You're what is a betrayal trauma practitioner? As I wanted to make sure I said it correct that way.
Yeah, no problem at all. Tim, so first of all, a betrayal trauma practitioner is somebody who helps somebody, who gently guides somebody to go through the steps to go from, breakdown to breakthrough, or however you want to put it, from, tears to transformation,
Okay.
from struggling to thriving. So basically, everybody on earth has been touched by trauma of some sort, whether it's the little t or the big T. Everybody has been touched by betrayal, whether it's the little b or the big B. That's whether it's your boss, your sibling, your parent, your child, your neighbor, your friend, your significant other. What makes betrayal trauma so different from, say, trauma in general is that it feels so personal.
Yeah.
Now, it's not personal necessarily, because let's just say you're with somebody and you discover that they're unfaithful, even though that's not because, it's nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with you, but it's not because of you, but it still feels personal. So if you lose, hypothetically speaking, you lose a parent, yeah, you can feel betrayed. You can feel betrayed and traumatized for a lot of reasons, but that parent didn't pass away to personally harm you or affect you. Now, if you want to get logical and start using the frontal cortex and so forth, you also know that somebody didn't cheat on you necessarily to intentionally betray you, but it does still feel personal nonetheless. That's the difference between a betrayal trauma practitioner, say, and a regular trauma practitioner.
Right, okay. No, that makes perfect sense. I just wanted to get that little bit out of the way, and I got caught up so much in my own words there.
Yeah, I can become winded, so feel free to cut me off if I get on these long tangents.
No, I absolutely love it. I do it myself and go down certain segues, but I like to try and keep myself consistent. But I'm a bit rusty. I've had sort of a week off, so to speak.
Okay.
And even then, I got tongue twisted and I was slipped up on my own words, so it was a bit crazy.
We're all only human.
Absolutely. I've spoke to quite a few life coaches. I used to do sort of a minor bit of it myself. I've got a small minor qualification, nowhere near the level what you're at. So I can understand certain aspects of it, but I can't. There's a lot of it that, in terms of psychology, that I don't understand and I don't get. And I'd never heard of a betrayal trauma practitioner. It's something that I'd never heard of. And then when I come across it, I was like, But I didn't want to look into it myself. I'd rather find out from somebody that's in the game. Because if I can look into it myself and do a whole mess of research, but that's just going to be my take rather than, someone who's been in the industry, which is completely it's a better take than what I'm going to produce, if that makes sense.
Certainly. And I just want to keep in mind, just like hypothetically speaking, a counselor, somebody can have a counseling degree and then they have more of a niche or a specialty. So there's betrayal trauma practitioners that specialize in reconciliation.
Okay.
There's betrayal trauma practitioners that specialize in divorce. So I'm a betrayal trauma practitioner where my niche, I don't want to say specialty because, I always cringe when somebody says, what are you an expert in? Because I always want to say failure. Really, that's what I'm an expert in life.
Yeah,
Failure,
yeah.
if you want to get real. But my niche or niche or however you pronounce it, my specialty is intrapersonal relationship coaching. Because when I work with somebody, I want to make sure the relationship you have with yourself is top notch.
Yep.
Because one of my mottos is the relationship you have with yourself sets the tone for all other relationships around you. And one thing that betrayal trauma does is it completely discombobulates the human you thought you were. So I want to get that back on track first. Now, certainly, I can help with divorce and I can help with reconciliation and I can help with all these other things. But really, it's what's the relationship you have with yourself? What's the narrative, the internal dialogue that's going on?
That's. I mean, even then, I'm 30 years of age, and even now, I've not quite found who I am. And that's
Well, Tim, listen, and here's the deal. We're not human beings. We're human evolvements.
Oh yeah.
So you can have a grasp on who you are now, but keep in mind, and I say this all the time, you're a different person today than you were 5 years ago.
Yep.
And you're going to be a different person 5 years from now than you are today. We're
Even
constantly
less.
evolving. So yes, getting to know ourselves, you constantly have to build those bridges to get to know the new person, which is why relationships can be awfully hard because while you're evolving, your significant other is evolving, and you both have to constantly get to know yourselves and one another.
Oh yeah. I mean, I can feel the evolution and even what I'm doing because I'm not going to lie. I used to be a bit of a piece of shit. Way
Haven't
back
we
then,
all?
and I think a lot of us have been like that. It just takes a semi a person that can sort of introspectively look at themselves and go, okay, this is what I did wrong. How can we make our lives better? Sometimes that's having children that does that. It was for me, amongst a whole mess of other stuff of just wanting to personally change, and even that's still going on. But when I talk about the grasp of myself, it's a bit different because I sort of know I look at it in way different steps. Like I'm one of these people that when I look into something, I don't just stop at like the first step of it. I'll look into every single aspect that I can. And it's like if I get if I get like if I'm curious about something and then I like it, I'll get obsessed with it. And then I'll have to look into every side of it. There's a certain way in which you'll get like Harry Potter fans that love Harry Potter. So they look into the whole mythos of it, And I'm the same, but I can do that on random subjects. And there's occasionally over my life, it's like because I've sort of lived that way, it's hard to have sort of grasped who I am because I've had these weird sort of personality shifts and changes where I've gone, okay, we was this person then and we're this person now. And some of it sort of cuts and fades across, but some of it doesn't. And it's a hard, excuse me, it's a hard thing to sort of grasp as who you are as a person, without any other social stuff. And, you got to take a lot into account and it's tricky.
Yeah, no, most certainly. You reminded me when you were talking about kids, there was a famous child psychologist one time who said, before kids, I had 6 theories. Now I have 6 kids and no theories.
That's a brilliant quote. They take up so much time.
By the way, it sounds like there's a haunted house door opening and closing. I don't know if you can hear it, but we'll just keep talking and ignore it.
In yours or mine?
No, it's not mine.
Yeah, I think someone's cutting a tree down by the sound of it.
Oh, okay.
I'm hoping it wasn't going to pick up. Normally, it doesn't pick up on my mic. It's quite a good microphone. It doesn't normally pick it up.
Oh, good. Okay.
But we'll find that out. Hopefully, I can just overtalk it. We'll see. A haunted house.
Well, we're getting close to fall and Halloween. So.
We are. It is one of my favourite times of year. On that little topic of children, I just want to say this is why I did give a sort of structural order to what I was going to say. Obviously, you yourself have adopted 2 children. So I want to, give a personal, clap and tip my hat to you because that takes a lot of hard work and dedication, and a lot of people don't have that. So I want to, again, that's...
Well, thank you, Tim. Yes, one thing about... I appreciate that. That's awfully nice of you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. With adopting children, you have to be much more proactive and intentional and things like that. And we have two wonderful adoptions, which, you know, time dependent. And if you're interested, I can certainly go into the story. But our first child was adopted through an agency. Our second child was adopted through foster to adopt. We had two of the most perfect adoptions. We were in the virtually in the room when they were born, cut the cords, and it's really been a
Wow.
perfect adoption, you know, ever since. Now, parenting isn't always perfect, but our adoptions were perfect.
So were they both from birth?
Yeah, pretty much. So our first our son our first child, we got a call on a Thursday to be in a first sonogram the following Tuesday, and we were in every sonogram thereafter until
Wow.
the birth mother went into delivery. My spouse actually cut the cord, and 3 days later we all hugged and kissed, left the hospital, and that was that.
It's
Um,
amazing.
yeah, and then 5 years later, when we went into the fostering process, um, it was kind of a process because, you know, we moved states, and we also got into another adoption agency, but they were just moving at a glacial speed. So I was talking to my spouse, how about we put additional pokers in the fire and we try to look into foster to adopt? We would still have our poker in the fire as far as the agency, but
Yep.
this would just, you know, increase our odds and chances. And my spouse wasn't on board at first because, you know, there's a lot of emotions involved with fostering kids and coming in and hearing the sad stories. And plus, we already had a 5-year-old son at this point.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we had to be careful. But long story short, we went through the long, tedious process of getting certified as foster parents. And the social worker told us in midway through, if you guys are planning on adopting a baby through the fostering process, I would stop right here because it's not going to happen. You might adopt, you know, a 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old that maybe has some attachment issues, but you're not going to adopt a child at birth, a baby
Yeah.
at birth. But by this time, we're already hook, line, and sinker into it. We're already taking kids in. Our mind was already made up. Plus, we thought it was an amazing lesson for our son to see, you know, how you can help others in various ways.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So anyways, we got certified late in August, and then the first week of September, we got a phone call from the hospital, and they said, hey, we had a baby girl that was just delivered. If you guys are interested, she's yours. So we're like, sure. So our nursery went within 45 minutes to all blue to all pink, not to get all gender stereotypical. And we're in the hospital, and she was in the NICU place. So we had to wait, you know, 3 to 5 days to take her home. But that was our story with our daughter.
Wow, that's crazy. I just, again, people out there that, again, my cousin was looking at adopting. He still is, but he's had his own, you know, his own emotional trauma alongside that with his partner and so on and so forth.
Yes.
But I know people that want to, and it's such a complicated process sometimes, but it's always so beneficial. Rather, you know, for people out there that can't have children, that even don't want them, they should just foster a child for like a week, 2 weeks, or whatever, just to take a bit of leeway off and see how it goes. Because I guarantee a lot of them will change their mind. You know,
I couldn't agree with you more. I absolutely couldn't agree
a
with
lot
you
of them
more.
probably
You know,
would. It's
yeah. And
so
and
fast.
I always say, you know, adoption is a wonderful I mean, you gotta definitely play your cards right and do your due diligence, but adoption is wonderful. I mean, especially for, you know, yes, there are a lot of couples out there that can't have kids. There's a lot of same gender couples that certainly they can still have kids from, you know, every facet, but choose just to open up their lives to a child that's already here that needs a bedroom and some love and loving parents, you know, what have you. But yeah, you know, it's funny because, you know, there's certainly a difference between theory and reality. And so many people that don't have kids, like I just said about this child psychologist, you know, who had 6 theories before kids and now 6 kids and no theories. It absolutely completely changes you, a complete overhaul. People that don't have kids don't realize the completely different person you become when
Yep.
you're a parent. Now, absolutely no judgment whatsoever or anything to people that have pets and consider their pets kids, because I get it. I have friends that don't have kids and their pets are their kids. I get it.
I've
Having
had that
said
too.
that, when you go away for the weekend, you can't put a bowl of food out for your kids. So, you know, so having kids and a pet is 2 different things.
Yeah, I mean, I've had people like that before in my past that have made that comparison, and I'm like, yeah, they're kind of the same because you can show that same love, but however, you haven't experienced that love, so you don't quite know. You know,
Yes. Yeah.
kind of a weird scale. But I know people that are heavy animal lovers. You know,
Oh, absolutely.
my
Oh,
partner
absolutely.
just went today and bought a hamster. Great, you know, that running round all night. Love it. Had no say in that whatsoever.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, I
You're
don't
a
even
true
like.
parent.
Yeah, but again, you know, I'm not going to fault her because she loves animals. She just loves taking care of animals. But then there's going to be no, you know, she's not going to treat that hamster better than her son. You know,
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah. No, of course.
it's ridiculous, isn't it? And she's got cats, and there's also, you know, but the child always comes first. You know,
Yeah.
it's,
No, absolutely. I have a friend who owns horses, and she her horses
that'd be
are her
difficult.
children,
Yeah, that'd be difficult.
completely,
That's
and I get that. I get that 100%. And I think you can have a decent amount, or maybe, I don't know, maybe in the same love capacity, whatever.
yeah.
But like I said, with a child, you can't go away for the weekend and put out some hay or a bowl of food for your kids. It's a whole
No.
different world.
Well, I mean, a horse is like a majestic beast as well. You know, it's a majestic creature. If I had a horse, I'd give it some love. If I had
Oh,
one,
absolutely.
wow, I'd be changing its shoes every week. I'd be brushing its tail every day. I'd be loving it. Like, but you can legitimately. I know the capacity is the same, but it never truly is.
Yeah.
Let's step off that topic again. I got these. We talk about segues, and I can kind of do it myself. I'm terrible at it. There's a secondary compliment I wanted to just get into. Again, you was in the Air Force and the military, I believe.
Yeah, 4 years in the
Yeah.
Army, and 4 years in the Air Force, which I can go into that story shortly.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to again, every single veteran I have on, I always like to again tip my hat and say thank you because you know my nephew's out serving at the moment from the UK, but anyone that's out serving doing what they're doing is a very very brave, courageous thing to do, and
Thank you.
I always tip my hat off to anyone again. So thank you again there. So
Thank you. Thank you for acknowledging that, Tim. That's awfully nice of you. Thank
that's
you.
okay. But I do want to talk about it though. Mostly the Air Force. Did you get to fly anything?
No, actually, I was basically. Let me just give you a quick recap of something. So one of the things that people say is you don't study trauma for no reason. So I came from a pretty traumatic childhood. I moved out on my own when I was 14. Lived on the streets for a little while. I quit school when I was in 6th grade. And what wound up happening, and I know I'm kind of, jumping all over the place.
No, it's okay.
What wound up happening is when I attended a local community college to try and start college. And again, this was after, I quit school in 6th grade and I kind of got into the party life and blah, blah, blah. The lady behind the desk asked me, do I have a high school diploma? And I said, no, I quit school at 6th grade. And she said, okay, do you have a GED or a high school equivalency degree? And I said, no, I don't. And she said, okay, I need a letter from your parents. And I said, well, I kind of moved out when I was 14. I haven't, really spoken to my parents. She said, well, there's not much that I can do for you. And so I really did all I could do to be the most suave speaker I could. But long story short, I promised her that if she turned some stone or whatever she could do to get me into college, I promised her that I would prove to her that I was college material in my first semester. And if not, that I would walk away silently.
That's the best. That is the best way to do it. Like,
Yeah,
just
she did
let
pull
me
some
prove
strings.
myself. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's all it's about. Just let me prove myself. Give me a. I mean, I've done that walking into jobs in the past, and I've been a warehouse supervisor. I've done all sorts of stuff, and I've just gone, well, you can just give me a week. If it doesn't
Yeah,
work out, you got a 3 weeks worth of work technically.
yeah. And I tell you, I'm going to tell you though, I do appreciate people going out on a limb like that, because let's face it, they can pull some strings or open a door for you that could really, come back and hit them in the face or hit them in the butt.
Oh, yeah.
So I really appreciate somebody taking a chance on somebody, trying to believe in them with that strict criteria of, if it doesn't work out, you both walk away silent, no hard feelings.
Yeah.
but long story short, with that, I did go on to get a semester of college in, and this is what happened. This is going back to the military. When I went to sign up for my second semester of college, the registrar's office said, "Are you registered with Selective Service?" Now, not to criticize any young kid out there or young man, but what does a 19-year-old know? So I had no idea what she was talking about, Selective Service. I said, "What is that?" And she said, "Here, call this number." So I went home and I called this number, who transferred me to this number, who transferred me to this department, who transferred me to this whatever. Long story short, I'm on the phone with an army recruiter, and I'm like, "What? How in the world did I get on the phone with you?"
And you're already enlisted.
and he's like, "Well, hey, now that we're on the phone, why don't we just chat?" And I'm like, yeah, I know how these go. Yeah, I'm not interested in these chats. He was like, "Well, no, so we get talking for a little while," and he's like, "Why don't you just come down and we talk?" So whatever, I'm 19. Next thing you know, I'm downtown. I'm signing away 8 years out of my life. But here's what happened. Technically, to join the military, you also needed a high school diploma. But because I went through a semester of college, I got 12 college credits, which equaled an equivalency degree. So I could have joined the military with that. So it actually worked out so well. But anyways, just to go back for a quick minute with what I was saying as far as college, Mary McMahon, who was the lady that pulled some strings that let me in to prove herself for my first semester of college. And here I was, like I said, a 6th grade dropout, partying, blah, blah. But I went on to graduate with an associate's in therapeutic recreation with honors. I went on to get my bachelor's degree, dual studies, psychology and theater with honors. And then with a lot of hard work, discipline, and dedication, went on to get my master's degree with honors.
Well, that's what I was saying, extremely qualified, like way qualified for the job, which is when I see the military and all these other things as well. And, you've published a CD and a kid's book. There's this spectrum of stuff. You've also got a fantastic website. Also, there seems to be a thing at the minute. Every life coach seems to have a really great website. Every single one. I think you're like the 4th, maybe 5th, like sort of, with life coaches and, this broad spectrum of it. But
yeah, certainly.
Every single one of them's had a brilliant website that's easy to negotiate and navigate through, and you've got a lot of free resources on there as well, which is extremely beneficial to everybody. I've looked for a couple of them. Again, I've just looked at the top ones. I didn't write them down, unfortunately. I do write notes, but I tend to write them on these little post-its rather than doing this whole massive paragraph. It's just so much easier. But even then, there's just so many other things. Ordained minister, like, that's crazy. There's so many of these other random things, and man of many talents. And for someone that was, like you said, a dropout, didn't even have, the equivalent of a high school diploma, and now where you are now, it's a complete reversal, 180.
Yeah. Well, like I tell everybody when they ask me, "What's your expertise?" I say failure, because, even though I'm at a place where I am now, certainly, nobody gets to that place without excruciating, extreme failure, continuous failure. But I always say, the strongest trees aren't necessarily planted in the best soil. It's the hardest winds that they've learned to stand tall and stand strong. And I think that's one of the reasons why I think it's so important that people really have the best relationship with yourself, because no one is exempt from trauma in life. No one is exempt from betrayal. Everybody has been dealt some pretty crappy hands in their life.
Oh, yeah.
Up till now, and we're still going to be dealt some crappy hands in the future that we just don't know of. So, I always like to have this little scenario of telling people, if we can just continuously be 3 meters below the ocean, that's not easy. It's not easy. But if you think about it, the top of the ocean, oh my gosh, there's thunder and lightning and strong winds and tempests that can, go up almost a mile with harsh, cyclones and you name it. but 3 meters under, it's consistent. It's absolutely consistent. Now that's not easy to do, and there's reasons for that. What is your background trauma? What was your childhood like? Even everything from what is your culture? I mean, Italians seem to be a little bit more high, strong than other cultures, and all these other things. But if really we can continuously work on what can I have to do to stay at a steady pace to the best of my ability, that's going to prevent you from becoming that leaf in the water, which turns at every direction of the wind. If the direction turns east, a leaf in the water will turn to the east. If it's north, the leaf will turn north. We have to stop being so reactive to our surroundings.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Which is why. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, carry on. Sorry, I'll cut you off.
It's so funny when people are on Facebook and they're like, I am who I am, but who you get is how you treat me. And yes, I think there's some interesting thought to that. But oh my God, if I'm going to be a different person based on whoever time somebody treats me, why did I just become a puppet?
Occasionally, some of them have some good points, but however, you have to wade through the dog shit to get to that. Like you have to. I don't know. I wouldn't even imagine the percentage. It's like not anything against these people. That most of the people that put like motivational quotes and inspirational quotes are doing fuck all. They're not doing it. They're doing nothing. They're just sitting there posting inspirational quotes all day. They're just pulling images from shares and whatever it is. There's tons of them. Getty fucking images or whatever. And it's all they do. And I like to go on social media a lot, but I've kind of backed off a little bit lately because, well, it's kind of worked out not to my benefit, but sometimes you can just go on there and there's just so much crap and people are just always just putting really crap opinions and just it's so difficult to not react to them. I tend to react to them stupidly. Like if someone puts something out, I'm just going to react the most foolish way I can, where it's going to be complete bullshit. And what I'm going to say is an absolute lie. It's like conspiracy theories, for example. I'll just put random ones out there that make no sense at all, that can be absolutely disproved within the snap of your finger. It's the exact same thing. So I tend to not go on there because, lately, because it's just easy to just get involved, and it's just, well, it's not worth it for one. It's not worth it in any way, shape, or form. But
most certainly, one of the things that Facebook, when I go to schools, of course, this is pre-COVID because it's hardly now, but when I would go to schools, one of the things that I would really, really stress is to really rein in your technology use, especially for a brain that's still forming.
Oh yeah.
Because studies show that it could just really bring on anxiety and depression. And then what happens is, especially these teens nowadays, and all of us, actually, I shouldn't just say teens, all of us, they get on Facebook and then we start comparing ourselves to what other people, we start comparing our dinner to what people ate and our vacation and our body. And it's like, next thing you know, you log off Facebook and you're like, wow, I'm a loser. Well, you know what?
That's absolutely correct as well, but people do compare their dinner.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting? And I tell kids at school this. I said, listen.
That's really funny as well.
Sorry?
That's really funny. There's a legitimate joke in there that people, there's a good joke in there, written in there, that people compare their dinner nowadays.
Yeah, they do. But Tim, here's the other thing too. What's kind of sad is some people use Facebook, like, some young people use Facebook as their self-esteem boost. If I post a picture of my butt and I get 100 likes, I'm gonna feel good for an hour. But something, Tim, there's a lot of the older generation that maybe is hospitalized or they don't have family or friends. They really count on social media and Facebook to keep connected. So on one way, social media is a joke. But on the other hand, social media is a lifesaver. So we got to be careful, as far as that. But anyways, what I was telling these kids when I go into school is I said, listen, when I went to buy a house, I went online and I did some research. And I researched all these houses and, blah, blah. And when I would go to click on the pictures of the house, I would see these pictures that were just beautiful and grand. But when I would go to visit the house, I'd be like, is this the same house I saw
Nope.
online? And the reason being is because realtors, they wait until the sun is shining in that room perfectly. They make sure the wall that they're going to get a picture of is perfectly freshly painted, has a homey picture on it. They're going to angle that camera at the end of the room so the room looks huge.
You know what else they do? They take doors off occasionally and put all the same carpets and wallpaper, so everything looks like it's bigger. It's
Yes.
It's
Yes.
a real trick of the brain, because you don't
No,
really
okay.
perceive the door until you have to open it, and then you've
Yeah.
got all this one flow of carpet, and it's a tricky business. I know about
Absolutely.
people
But
doing
but
it.
people do the same thing. People do the same thing. You know, people don't wake up in the morning, take a selfie and post it. That's not what people do. People get up, they brush their hair, they brush their teeth, they put on their makeup, then they take a beautiful picture of them posing. Then they might even do an app that makes them even look more. Then they'll post that. Well, then what happens is that your classmate that's looking at that says, oh my God, I'm so ugly. I wish I was, A, B, and C. I don't care if you're the most beautiful celebrity. They don't even look like that in the morning.
No. There's a great. I'm not going to name the names, but I had a friend who. Well, in fact, no, I'm not going to name names, but I've got two separate occasions where this happened. One was a person I was living with. Wasn't dating, it was just a friend. And basically I was living for a while, and then I didn't even notice, because I was living this sort of partyish lifestyle myself. And then one morning, she came in and had no eyebrows. And I was like, whoa. I was like, what happened there? I was like, that's crazy. And it was the first time I'd ever seen it myself. But a guy that I used to live with, I've mentioned him on the show many times because he's got just a multitude of really great stories. But he was dating a girl once who did the same thing, but he was dating her for a couple of years before he found out. He's a somewhat clueless guy in a way. He overlooks things, or he used to at least. He's a very, very good friend, but I think it was about a year and a half or something till he realised, like, she'd get up way early, put on the face, do everything, and he just didn't realise. And one day it just all slipped up, and then he was like, "Whoa, what's going on here?" And it was kind of crazy. It was eye-opening, but it took X amount of time for, I believe, her to come out of her shell completely as well.
Oh yeah. So that's why they say, hey, if you really want to truly know what somebody looks like, take them swimming.
Well,
After
it doesn't always work out. I don't know. There's some people out there that can be pretty fast on the job at putting a face on, and
yeah, but when they emerge from the water, I mean, come on, unless they have waterproof mascara and the whole 9 yards on. But you know what? You said something, Tim, that I just want to go back for a second. You said, my friend was pretty clueless or whatever with it. I'll tell you something. Not that I actually there's, not to get all trauma informed, but there's actually something called betrayal blindness. And of course, this isn't what you're talking about, but it just reminded me of this because that's where my mind goes. Betrayal blindness is also called like the Red Riding Hood syndrome.
Right.
Red Riding Hood, she saw the wolf, she saw his teeth, she saw his big eyes, she saw his long nose, but she was so wanted to see her grandmother so much that she almost overlooked that.
Yeah.
And that's what betrayal blindness is sometimes our bodies will actually feel something that's a little off, but we want what we want so badly that we're not willing to see it. That's called betrayal blindness.
Well, a better example of that is the film Shallow Hal.
Oh yeah. That's a great example.
With Jack Black. Fantastic film. Fantastic.
Yes.
Really good
Yeah.
film.
My favorite scene was when he was on the canoe.
Yeah,
and the canoe was tipped almost upwards.
So many. There's so many great scenes. It was back in the day when comedy was just almost no holds barred. It almost kind of still is now. People keep saying a lot of stuff about cancel culture, but there's still a lot of very wild stuff that you can watch out there. If anything,
Certainly.
probably more. And age rating's kind of gone down a bit. You know, I've noticed for certain topics. You know, there's certain things where I used to watch as a kid that would be defined as like a 12 now, and you go,
Yeah,
which would have been a 15 back then, and you go, that's a bit strange. So
yeah, most certainly.
it's almost weird in a way where people talk about this cancel culture, but then there's not really a great deal of it in terms of the film industry. Not really.
Yeah, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think, you know, in my personal opinion, of course, this isn't my this is above my pay grade. In my
Well,
personal
mine.
opinion, I think a lot of comedy now has gotten quite political, and you got to be very careful there because there's a good part of your audience that's going to find it hysterical and it's absolutely, you know, right up their alley. But you also really do kind of shut off another portion of your audience. I think, you know, which is kind of sad because comedy is one of the things that bridges everybody together,
it
just
should.
like music, you know, music bridges everybody together. But as soon as people start getting political with their music, you know, you kind of start losing some followers. So it's a tight wire. It's a tightrope.
Yeah, it definitely is. Obviously, we went way off topic.
I know.
Obviously, you did. Obviously, you know the main thing that you do. You have ever had any? I mean, again, you've had a big traumatic like upbringing, and you've had these hurdles that you've had to overcome. What would you say is the hardest? Because I want to kind of get people to get a perspective of you and what you've been through, and then kind of reflect that back onto the audience, if that makes sense. Because
All
that
right.
gives more of
So,
a personal insight into people. It's
no,
kind of what I try
absolutely.
to do. It's
Yeah.
try to anyway.
Yeah, which, and you're right on, Tim, because you know studies show, or common sense does as well. People like relatability even over likability. Um, for instance, you know, if let's just say you're talking to a female who, God forbid, loses a child, right? She can talk to somebody about losing that child, and that person can say all the right things and give them empathy and sympathy and nod their head. But man, if that person is talking to another person who lost a child, now that conversation is on a completely different energy wave.
Yep.
So yeah, people are all about relatability, even over likability. You know, I was born and raised with a cousin who was closer than a brother, and we did everything together. We did everything together. We were brothers. We grew up together. We were best friends. Best friends. We went into business together. We watched each other's kids and each other's weddings. He knew everything, my passwords, my bank accounts. I found out one day on accident he was stealing from me. Um, and for a while. And shortly after that, he got into a car accident and died.
Oh.
So I couldn't even process and work through my hurt, my betrayal. That was probably pretty significant
Yeah, that's tricky.
of a betrayal and a loss. Because you know, Tim, not that it would necessarily make a difference per se, but let's just say I came into your house and I stole $1,000, right? And you said, Mr. J, why in the world would you steal $1,000 from me? Well, listen, the bottom line is I stole $1,000 from you. You don't have that $1,000 anymore. It's spent. But I would hope that it would make a little difference if I said, it's none of your business. I'll do it again. Or if I said, Tim, listen, my son is sick. I can't afford medication. I had no other option. I'm so sorry. I'll do what I can to pay you back. When you have no closure over something, it's an open wound.
Yeah. That's what I was saying. That's a tricky sort of emotion to manage in a way because everyone always craves closure. Like it is almost a human desire to crave it from sort of any aspect of life, be it when you fuck up in your relationship or make fuck ups in your past. I mean, even then, one of my first previous relationships, it was a mess. You know, I'd got cheated on for over a child, basically. I had a child that wasn't mine, raised her for 3 years. It was in a 4-year relationship ish. And then basically at the end of that, I found out she wasn't mine, and that was hard to process as a younger person. You know, I was like 21 by the time this was all ended. Before that, I was on the streets myself. I was 16 when I went to the streets. for a little bit of time, and that was just mainly because I was just wild. Just it weren't even because I was getting kicked out. None of that. It was just I didn't even want to go home. I was just
Yeah.
having such a fucking great time.
Certainly.
But obviously, you know, after all that process, and doing DNA tests and whatever, and it was tricky, and I had so many questions that just got left in the sand. You know, it was just left there, and so you know, years later, well, I had I found a SD card that had loads of photos on, which I basically then sent back. And then, you know, not befriended, become close friends with my ex-partner, but we got onto an amicable level where, again, I forgive her. We you know, spoke a little bit. We got a bit of closure over the subject. And it was one of the big things that I'm thankful for in life, is that sometimes people can just, in a completely different situation and environment, come to some sort of close terms and grips over things. And, you know, it's a pretty tricky thing to you know, I think if I didn't get that closure, I think I'd still be a bit fucked up, you know?
Yeah, and that's the thing with that's the thing with trauma, again, big T or little t, is that it's going to come out in some way of your life. It's
Oh,
going
yeah.
to come out, whether eventually you are hospitalized for stress, whether eventually your organs get affected, whether eventually you start having dreams and nightmares, and you might not even realize why your
Again,
body's reacting to
all
this.
of those symptoms right there.
Yeah, okay, exactly. How was it seeing her daughter, or did you see her daughter?
No, I didn't know.
Okay.
I didn't do that. I just sent stuff through the post. We just communicated via messages. There was never any. I've never seen face to face. I don't know. I think it'd be tricky. I've
Yeah.
been. I was open to it at the time, but now later down the line, I'm a bit like, I don't know if it's worth it. There's no point. You know?
Yeah.
The closure's kind of done now. Occasionally there'll be an odd message or something. Very rare. Very rare. But it's just, if again, you know, I've got so much crap and junk. If I find something, I'll go, oh, you know, do you want this? Because I don't need it.
Oh yeah.
And it's more part of your past than it kind of is mine. So
Yeah.
it's you know, even then, that's the only sort of real time. I just don't think I would.
Yeah.
It's pretty tricky.
Oh, absolutely. And certainly that would be considered a pretty significant trauma and a pretty significant betrayal. Especially if it was intentional.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure on her full mindset. Um, it was kind of strange because she just got kicked out of her house, moved into where I was living. Because I had my mum had sold her house, so we was living with my uncle for a little bit while she was looking for a house. And during all this time, her parents just landed her on fucking my doorstep, which was crazy. Just full bags, the works, like the lot, and
Wow.
just dumped her there basically. But then during all this time, she was probably in this fucked up place, and I don't know. You know, I didn't really specifically ask the full reason as to why. I just wanted a couple of minor questions, like you know,
Yeah.
it was just the whens, because there was moments where I was questioning my own sanity, like how did you manage to do this? You know, we were living together, and you know, we was pretty introvert. So how
Yeah.
did you manage?
And you know
How did you
something?
manage?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you something, Tim. A lot of people, and especially, you know, your average straight guy is not going to pursue answers. They're going to kind of close that door and move on. So I really applaud your courage to even
No,
ask
thank you.
that question, to hopefully find some type of closure.
Well, that's the thing is, you know, sometimes it's crap opening up that box, you know, but I think it's worth it in the long run because I think you always gain something out of it.
Yeah,
You know,
I always tell people you have to get uncomfortable to be comfortable.
comfortable. Yeah, yeah. You've said a lot of great quotes during this show, man.
Well,
You've been a significant-
I'm a bunch of walking useless quotes. Well, they're not useless, but
No, that's absolutely
they're
not
useless facts.
Have you got any sort of advice that you could give to sort of young people growing up now, that are coming out of COVID? Because it's been a pretty tricky time for everybody. Doesn't matter what country you're really in. Some countries are still, you know, all messed up during lockdown. I know Canada's pretty not sure what's going on there. I've got
Yeah.
friends in Canada; they don't know what's going on. but just any sort of advice, because it's been pretty tricky. And I know
Yeah.
you've wrote a kid's book, and so it'd be interesting to just get another take on it.
Well, I mean, first of all, that's a pretty loaded question because you can really go from any perspective, any angle, and
Yeah, sorry, there's a lot of variables. My bad.
Yeah, but just in general, I'll just say this. Number one, I always tell everybody, in the history of mankind, no one has ever died from a snake bite. Now, what happens is people die from the venom getting into their bloodstream, into their veins, going to their heart and affecting their organs. So one of the things we have to be careful about is when somebody gives us pain, not to give ourselves suffering. Tim, right now, if I say, hypothetically speaking, you have frog breath, right? Okay. I just insulted you. I just offended you. I just gave you some pain. Now it's up to you to roll your eyes and brush that off like dew on a leaf, let it roll off. Or you can choose to fester for the next few days and say, I can't believe that, Mr. J. I can't believe he said, I'm so frustrated. I'm so furious. If I ever talk to him, well, now you're giving yourself suffering. And what kids, I think, nowadays have to do is be very careful with social media and comparing yourself and all that stuff, because very little is real on social media. But also, don't let things penetrate you. Let them roll off like a dew on a leaf. That's number one. Number two, not to get graphic, but do you know in the average ejaculate, there's about 250 million sperm?
Yep, I've had mine tested years ago.
Okay, all right. So here's the deal. You're already a winner. You're already a winner because you're alive. You started your life in the race of your lifetime with millions of others, and you were number one.
Yep.
So remember that you already come into life a winner.
And even then, when I got tested, I got tested again, going back a little bit again. I got tested when I had to have a DNA test, and I thought, let's just test my sperm out of curiosity, and it wasn't very good. Let's put it that way. It was another reason why I half changed my lifestyle a bit, because I was like, a regular sperm. There was all sorts of weird sort of comments as well. And I was like, this is a bit, this is pretty bad. It was a low sperm count, it was a regular. And I was like, man, that's a hard thing to take.
Yeah.
So even then, I made certain lifestyle changes. I've got 2 kids now. So, that was, I did a lot of lifestyle changes. I mean, I still smoke and I still drink. But trust me, in comparison, it's not that bad. I know that was a bit of a loaded question, so sorry.
No, and that's good. That's good. Listen, small changes equal out to large outcomes in a lot of ways. I always say, in so many areas of life, pebbles make mountains and raindrops make seas. If today you might go to the gym and you might start lifting up the equivalent of what looks like a dog bone, 6 months later, you're up to 15 pounds, and a year later, you're up to 50 pounds. Well, pebbles make mountains and raindrops make seas. You might even look at that 50 pounds and say, I'm not happy, I want more. Wonderful, but look where you came from.
Yep.
You're lifting up a dog bone. So I'm glad you made changes. Small changes today is big outcomes tomorrow.
Do you ever, obviously I know you've got your own sort of services and stuff. Occasionally I like to go on sort of Reddit a lot, and there's a lot of groups on there for depression and self-help and stuff like that. Have you ever thought about just randomly going on there and just putting little messages onto people's, posts that are in a really shit time?
Really? Tim, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not familiar with Reddit. I mean, it's funny because I work with minds, not social media and stuff. So even though I'm on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and all these Twitters and all this other stuff, I'm not tech savvy, so that's why, I try to, that's why, I appreciate you telling me my website looks nice, because, it's something that I worked on, because I am not tech savvy at all. I work with brains, not computers. But I'm not tremendously familiar with Reddit, but I will certainly most certainly look into it. And yeah, one of the things that I do every day, I do try to, and we actually discussed this earlier, almost as a bit of a joke, but one of the things I do like to do is every day I do like to go and post something motivational. And I don't know if you've checked out my YouTube channel, but every week I do upload a free, 2, 3, 4 minute clip on anything at all, from dating to betrayal to relationships to marriage to divorce to you name it. So just to kind of give people, because I'll tell you something, a lot of people out there, especially when it comes to betrayal trauma, they feel very alone, very isolated. So I do like your idea to get out there and just let people know they're not alone, and there is people out there if you need to talk.
Well, it's completely anonymous as well. And I think, sometimes I won't even give, sometimes it might be bad advice. Sometimes it'll be a bit of a joke, couldn't be anything, but I just think occasionally, just because, again, like you say, some people are just so alone that they are just spending their life on social media, and a lot of what they get is just shit back, especially on some depression site. And there's people telling them to just do themselves in, and you're like, man, you're kind of in the wrong place right now, And they're always and it's crazy, because it's almost like these people aren't aware they're putting themselves in this position, because they just want to reach out for help, but they're just oblivious to the fact that some people are going to negatively spin it.
Yeah, and it's sad that somebody would say that, because as you may or may not know, people that are depressed, whether it's clinical or otherwise significant, whatever, they don't necessarily want to die. They don't want to die. No. They just want the pain to stop. So to tell somebody to do yourself in, it's completely, it's just an asinine response, because I don't think I've ever talked to somebody depressed that wants to die necessarily. They want the pain to stop.
Yeah, there is a lot. I mean, it is a very broad spectrum of things, because, you get people that just self-harm, and I knew a few friends that would just cut, their legs would be fucking shreds,
which is a coping mechanism.
Yeah, but they never wanted to kill themselves, never wanted to do any of that. It was just a coping mechanism, and I was like, man, that's so, it's a crazy way to cope.
And even if people do say, I want to die, when you unravel that, I want the pain to stop, and the only way I understand the pain can stop is to, take myself. But what little people know, well, maybe I'm sure they do, unfortunately, is that when you do take your own life, all you're doing is transferring that pain to your circle.
I mean, the problem is as well, a lot of, excuse me, a lot of these people with this pain, and I've been there myself, we just don't even know how to get the message out, because we're just so confused. We're like, man, a lot of the time, especially if you're younger, you're just feeling all this emotion, and some of it could be hormonal, which you've got very little control over, unless you go and really see a doctor and get some serious looking into it. But a lot of mine was a stupid hormone imbalance, which was crazy.
Yeah. Something, I'm glad you brought that up, Tim, because I'll tell you something. Our son is 10, and where we live, that's middle school, so he's going into middle school.
Yep.
So before school, I spent a couple months every once in a while talking to him about various things. And one of them was puberty. And, I was talking about how, eventually your voice is going to drop, and, you're going to start getting hair on your body. And we got to start making sure that we, wash our underarms, and every day let's start putting on deodorant. And I'm having these talks with him for a couple of months. And then one day it hit me, and I actually felt bad. And I told him, I said, something, buddy? I said, for months now, I've been telling you about all these physical changes about puberty, and I haven't told you about any of the mental or emotional changes. And I apologize. And that's when I had to break it down, but I was telling him how his amygdala, which is the emotion part of our brain, is growing at almost double the size of our frontal cortex, which is our logical part of our brain. And I said, so sometimes when you feel certain emotions or anger or this or that, understand it's not, buddy, nothing's up with you. You're a good kid. It's that your emotions are getting the best of you, because the part of your brain, the amygdala, that deals with emotions is growing at a much rapid pace than, you know, your logic side of your brain. So I just felt bad that I was focused so much on the physical aspect of puberty, and I completely left out the emotional and the developmental and psychological and every other aspect.
There is some sort of psychological things to it, because I mean, I hit puberty early. I was just going into what would be my secondary school, but I've hit it early. My nephew hit it early. My dad did. I'm pretty sure my son's going to. We're just little hairy people. Like,
Yeah.
legitimately, we're all about 5'7". My nephew's got the advantage. His dad's built like a giant, so he got some sort of step up, unfortunately. So he got some new genetics put into it. But everyone else, we're all like 5'8", 5'10", and I got the short end of the stick. I'm 5'7". Hairy everywhere. I have to shave a lot. I'm literally like a little gorilla.
Really.
And but it's funny because when I was growing up, I got a lot of hair early. But one of the things that I didn't expect, obviously, you know, your dad gives you this talk, and I didn't really get so much of a talk. But I remember one of the weirdest memories I've got was, obviously, my mum and dad divorced, and I remember, you know, I was thinking about it the other day, because again, I'm looking at my son, and I'm listening to a whole bunch of stuff. You know, most of the time I'm watching bullshit documentaries or podcasts, but lately I've just gone into a whole different field of stuff.
Yeah.
And it made me go back thinking about my own sort of puberty and my own childhood, and you know, some of my memories are pretty clear, some of them are vague. But one of the ones that was very clear was, I remember us going out, me, my dad, going out to this Italian restaurant. And I'd probably only known who is now my stepmom for maybe 5 weeks. And I remember she's a doctor as well. She's a GP. She's a partner in GP practice. So she's pretty high up. And I remember we was at this table, and I remember talking about stuff, and we was talking about hair and stuff like that. And I remember being a kid, and I don't know the exact way I worded it, but I remember saying, do you know what's really weird? Why are my nipples getting really big? Like, because again, this was strange as a child. When you're flat-chested, you're always flat-chested, like as a youngster. But then when you get through a little bit of puberty, your nipples get a bit bigger for no random reason whatsoever, even as a man. I don't know if it's, fuck knows, mammary glands, whatever they are. And obviously they were getting a bit bigger, like a fucking, not like a pizza fucking, don't you know what I mean? But, and it was a strange thing for me, because everything else, I was like, I heard about all this on TV and whatever, but then I was like, no one told me my nipples were going to get these weird sort of bulge behind it. No one mentioned that, and I thought that was so strange. So obviously we was there at this table, and I just whacked my nipple out. I was like, yeah, look at this, and then just whacked it out clean, like in the middle of a restaurant. It was a moment in history that I'll remember, because I was like, that's actually pretty funny looking at it now. Posh restaurant. Recently.
So are you speaking primarily of your nipple or the areola?
Yeah, it was mainly the areola, you know.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, it gets sort of bigger.
Yeah.
And
Did your stepmom have any input, any response to that?
I can't remember the full.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember that. That's what I can't remember. I remember my dad telling me to put my shirt down. That's what.
Yeah.
I
You know, one of the mistakes, and I'm sure you've heard this before, and listen, so many of us fall short of this, is people like to have, quote, the talk with their kids. And really, it should be a constant conversation.
Oh yeah.
You know, now don't get me wrong. We don't throw out the term adoption every hour on the hour, but adoption is a conversation that's talked about regularly. You know, it's so, because I don't want to get to a point where I have to sit down and tell my kids about adoption. You know, they knew from the get, you know, what adoption is. It's just an ongoing conversation. And the same thing with, you know, sex and sexuality and puberty and everything else. It's an ongoing, of course, age appropriate conversation.
Well, that's the other side of it is, I have a few friends now that have just, their kids are going into secondary school. And again, when we got taught sex education in this country, we didn't really get taught fuck all. Our teacher was pretty slack, to be honest. We started it in, I think, when we was about 15, 16, which is pretty late. I think it was only just getting introduced into our fucking school system, to be honest.
Really? That surprises me. Yeah. Okay.
But down, I mean, even then, it was a bit of a joke. I mean, I never really went to school anyway, so what I did see of that class, it wasn't great. I knew, I knew it wasn't, it was the same shit every week, to be quite
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
They just basically teach you the same sort of thing that they taught you in science about, in terms of anatomy, and then they'd add some sort of other bits to it as well. Which,
Yeah.
again, when your kids at that age kind of know a little bit more than your teachers. Some of them did. I mean, we had a kid in our class that was pregnant. She knew more than the
Yeah.
fucking teacher, retrospectively, because again, it was so bizarre. Stuff that you don't even think about until you have these conversations as well. I've kind of forgot there was two people pregnant that year. Couldn't sit their GCSEs.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Happens.
I've told my son, I mean, my daughter's too young, but I've told my son, from a very early age, just even beginning the conversation of, your body is your body, and make sure you don't respect anybody else's personal space. Make sure nobody else disrespects your personal space. That's the beginning conversation of hopefully developing into, a more broad conversation about, respecting people's personal space in their bodies, which will eventually lead into that conversation of, physical touch and things like that. So really, it's good to start early. People are afraid that they're going to be putting things into their kids' heads. Kids are,
Anyway.
Listen, I remember when my brother and I were 8 years old, we would get like the Sears catalog in the mail. We'd take a pencil and try to erase the bra off the model with the pencil eraser. I mean, and we were 8 years old. So kids are already seeing and doing things.
That's amazing. That's one of the funniest things I've heard this week. That's to erase the bra off.
Yeah. So kids are already thinking. So we're not going to plant anything into their head, and as long as we use age appropriate, developmentally appropriate questions and conversations, if anything, our kids are going to come to us over their friends, and really, that's what it's all about.
No. I mean, again, like this person's children, they're just studying it now, and they're going into secondary school, which is much more appropriate in a way. Because I do think that there is a fine margin between learning things, because there is some kids that fucking fuck around and develop way early, and it does happen. That's a fact.
Yeah,
it's happened throughout mankind. But again, maybe if they was taught early about contraception, they'd probably gone a different way. They might have set their GCSEs. You don't know.
Yeah, most certainly.
But it's just almost a taboo subject in a way, isn't it? Which is the real problem. Some parents don't want to talk about it. Some people do. Some people dread it, and it's like we kind of need to. It's the reproductive system.
It's that thing of out of sight, out of mind. Yeah, out of sight, out of mind. And my kids don't do that. My kids wouldn't do that. Yeah, take the average teen's computer and look at their browser history, and then we'll talk.
Ooh, if you can find they haven't deleted it. Or put some sort of VPN on it nowadays,
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean,
that's the
listen,
thing.
my son has a computer, and he was 9.5, and I went into his history one time, and he put into Google boobs. So I mean, so even at the age of a tween or a teen, they're Googling a lot more than that.
Well, even I mean, it's like when you're a kid and you get a calculator and you spell boobs backwards.
Yes, upside down.
Look at this! Look how clever I am! Ha ha! Those kids, man, like you're spelling the word boobs, but it's still you know what it is.
Yeah. And you know something, even if you put all of the restrictions on your computers and your phones, whatever, then they get on the school bus or they go to the school and their friends are like, hey, check this out. So you got to start having those conversations early.
There's but it's like, well, that's probably a bad example, but no, it probably was. There's like a Black Mirror episode. You ever seen that?
I just vaguely.
There's one where basically a girl she has a little bit of trauma, and then her mum puts this thing in her head where when anything dangerous shows up, it sort of phases and blanks it out. So if there's like a dog that's barking and it just muffles the sound, and it's like a cubic pixelated image. And it was I was going to try and give an example back towards it, but if you've not seen it, I'd advise checking it out.
Okay.
It makes you think, could be this kind of stuff available in the future, which I think it probably would.
Wow, that's almost fascinating. I just wanted to say this, Tim, for people that have sons. And again, I in a way I hate to be gender stereotypical, but there are stereotypes for a reason. A lot of boys or tall boys, aka men, that they're not good with necessary face-to-face eyeball conversation, especially in a confrontational or an emotional deep way. So I just want to give three quick tips for anybody that would ever, whether they're talking to their spouse or their son or whatever. When you're talking to a boy or a young man or a man, again, a lot of this eye contact is uncomfortable for those deep things. So what I do with my son is, and I started doing this when he was 5 years old, I have what's called open palm conversation. So we sit together in a room, and he's on one side of the room and I'm on the other, and we stretch out our hands like this with our palms up, because because basically when our palms are up, it's a direct link to our heart is open. Our hands are open, our heart is open, and our palms up, and it's a no judgmental conversation. So whatever my son tells me, it's a no judgmental conversation. Another thing that I do when I want to have a conversation with my son, because I know he doesn't like a lot of eye contact for whatever reason, boys, are not into that eye contact. We'll sit back to back. So we'll sit on the floor back to back, because not only does this take away the whole eye to eye pressure, but it's also symbolic for no matter what you tell me, son, I got your back.
Well, it's like in the military as well. You're watching each other's back, aren't you?
Yes.
As soon as you said that with your military background, I would assume that did you get that put that in place from your military background?
No, I never got that deep into the military thing. But the last thing I wanted to say is you could also sit face to face and have a conversation, and just both of you put little something on your eyes, whether it's a sleeping cap or whatever. That way you're having a face-to-face conversation, and you can hear and whatever, but there's not that discomfort of looking at one another.
I think that back-to-back thing is extremely beneficial.
It is. It actually,
mind blower.
Yes, and married couples do that too. Sometimes I don't do that much more, but I sometimes married couples that are having trouble even in communication or betrayal. One of the things I'll do is have them go back to back, because that way it's a non-threatening, non-judgmental conversation, but it lets each other know physically, I got your back. And especially when trust is broken, that's one of the things that has to be felt, is you got each other's back.
That's probably one of the best things I've heard as well with that back-to-back thing. I only asked about the military. I didn't mean in terms of did you do that. I meant obviously, did you? Because I see when you see that a lot in the military in films.
Oh yeah. Well, we would do that in the field to help keep each other awake. But...
Yeah. But no, I didn't mean specifically. Were you there back-to-back with someone, gun and gun? No, I didn't mean like that. I just meant I would imagine that would be where it'd come from in a way. It's because again, the minute that you said that, that's what I thought of. Oh, that makes perfect sense. That is the best way to communicate, because one, you're not looking at each other, you're looking at everything else. You're taking in, and you've got that person's back. They've got your back. It's a very good, an extremely good tool. I've never really thought about doing that, but I'm gonna.
Yeah, and in the military, obviously, it's used as a protective thing. Like you make sure that you can see behind me and whatever. But you could
a different thing. That's all it is.
But it could also be symbolic for, because let's face it, Tim, especially nowadays, we live in such a microwave society. Listen, if you want a hamburger, you get it through the drive-thru and you got it within minutes. If you want a piece of butt, all you got to do is download an app, and within minutes, you can have somebody at your house, getting it on. We live in such a microwave society. So it's so easy to pull a couple apart if they're committed to working together. So we have to protect ourselves from the outside world. That's the whole thing about a ring. When you put a ring on somebody, it's that, listen, we give everybody else everything. We give everybody else our time. We give everybody else our expertise. We give everybody else our money, but we're not going to give everybody else our hearts and our intimacy.
What about those people? Because there are people out there that just go, well, we don't need a ring because, we're still together. And there's people that I know people that were engaged for 20 years before they actually really got married. And I was like, you could have just done that from the get-go. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not really applicable, and it's so strange that some people just see it as a label. I'm not saying I see it that way. But some people do.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. When I say ring, it's just symbolic for commitment. That's it.
Yeah, yeah.
And what's in the confines of your commitment, because obviously there's people out there where they have a commitment but yet they have, you know, an open relationship or
Yeah.
poly this or whatever, and that's all, you know, no judgment, that's on them.
Prenup.
But when I say ring, it can mean symbolic for an actual ring, or metaphoric for this is my commitment that's going to be honored.
Well, that's the other thing is like people that have these crazy prenups that are just like, I'm taking a lot. See you later. You know, that's not, you're not really committed, are you? If you're going to say you're committed, you're going to at least make that equal rather than just being a total bastard.
Yes. Yeah. Well, okay. And now listen. I'm going on 20 years of marriage, so I believe in marriage. I love marriage. I mean, it's no joke. It's not easy. But so, and you know, there's no prenups, and you know, everything we have, it's together. We only have one bank account. Everything is, you know, together. But I will say this. I do understand if one person has busted their butt, and I mean busted their butt, to get a degree and get an education, or even work in the family business and build up to where they have a little nest, and then they have this and they have this and they have this. And nowadays, because, you know, let's face it, you know, we live in a society where marriage is almost 50%. I don't hold it against anybody if they want a prenup. Now, it's not me. It's not my thing. I don't want a prenup. That's not my thing at all. But I can understand somebody wanting to protect something they worked very hard for, because I'm going to tell you something. My father was married to my mother for 30 years. And when they got divorced, she got nothing. But my father got remarried, and after 18 months to his second wife got divorced, and she got half of his pension.
That's a sting.
Yeah, so I can
Personally,
understand people saying, you know what, I wanna feel protected. Now, again, they're not for me. I don't want one. I'm not comfortable with one. Blah blah blah. Blah. But I understand people that are like, you know what, I busted. I'm not going to let you have half of my family business that we've had for 300 years. If you decide to get a bug up your butt one time and you don't want to work on this marriage.
Yeah, no, that's completely different. And, I mean, you get people out there like that anyway. And sometimes it's not even necessarily just women. Sometimes you get a lot of crazy young men going after older women.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is even more, I mean, that seems to be more predominant lately. I mean, every other, that's why I kind of don't read like shitty newspapers, because you'll always see every other week that there's some young guy marrying some old woman, and then there's a million comments on it, and you're like, wow, what do you expect? Who cares? You know? I think I've actually almost worked through a lot of my notes. It's kind of crazy.
Well, that's awesome.
Not too bad.
That is awesome.
Who inspires you?
Okay, so I'm gonna be honest with you. Are you familiar with Eva Peron?
I'm absolutely not, no.
Okay, so have you ever seen the movie Evita with Madonna?
Yep.
Okay, or are familiar with it. So Eva Peron was, well, I'm not going to get into the story, but basically she was born and raised in Argentina, where not only did women not have rights, but she also was born out of wedlock.
Okay.
So she was probably regarded as the scum beneath the bacteria pond. And her mother wanted her to go into sewing like she did. And she said, Mom, no, I want more for myself. As a matter of fact, Eva Peron was so, she loved her father. She was very close with her father, but like I said, her father had her out of wedlock. So even when her father died, she wasn't even allowed to go to his own funeral because she was a nothing. But in her teen years, she took a train to Argentina, and she broke into two of the most difficult industries, and that's politics and arts. And she became a well-known actress, and obviously she became a well-known politician. Now, depending on who you're talked to, some people consider her a Wonder Woman, some people consider her a whore. I don't care. She went on to become the most beloved female married to Juan Perón. and I just think for somebody to have, it's funny, Tim, because you started this program where, Jason, you're so qualified. You have this, and this. Okay, but let me tell you something. More than my degrees, behind all those is determination. So that's what I have. I have determination. And so when I see somebody else like Eva Peron who has determination, that's what fuels me. Because you know something, you're going to fall far more times than you're going to get up and succeed. But it's just the act of getting yourself up again and getting back on that horse. Whether you fall off again or you win the race, that doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. It's that determination that when you start a race, it's not necessarily are you going to win. It's are you going to finish that race? And if that takes you an hour to finish that race or 22 hours and you come last, you were determined to finish the race. That's what matters. So determination fuels me.
No, that's absolutely inspirational as fuck, man. Like, that was a really inspirational message. Like, even then, like, talked about who inspired you, and you just inspired me with that message. That was damn good. Let's just move off topic. I mean, I like to try and keep my shows under 2 hours. I don't want to keep up too much of your time. But what kind of films are you into? Just out of random curiosity. Just to try and get to know you a little bit more. Just
films probably that the average person doesn't know and certainly doesn't like. I love films that really just take me away. Tim, let me just say this. I love my job as a coach. I'm very busy as a coach. But I always say, who did the Titanic sink? Who did the Titanic save when it sank? And the answer is no one. So I got to be very careful that every single day I am hearing trauma and trauma and trauma and trauma. If I don't prioritize self-care for myself, I'm going to go down like the Titanic did. And if I go down, who am I going to save? So I have to be there for myself. I have to be there for my family. I have to be there. So if I'm going to watch a show or a movie, it's got to be something that's just going to take my mind completely away. So I love, first of all, I'm a big fan of Barbra Streisand. So I love her music. I love the movie Prince of Tides. I don't know if you ever heard of it or saw it. I love Prince of Tides.
I've not seen it.
Okay. The Bridges of Madison County.
Not heard that either.
A movie Torch Song Trilogy.
Nope.
So
3 for 3. This is a rarity. I've watched a lot of films.
But my guilty pleasures are anything on investigation discovery, because I loved also, before I went into coaching, I was a special education teacher for a long time, and I also started pursuing my degree in criminology because I loved how the criminal mind works. How does somebody become a serial rapist, a serial murder? Is it nature versus nurture? Is it childhood trauma? Is it all the above? So anything on investigation discovery. I also love Married at First Sight. I don't know if you've ever heard of that show.
I've heard of it, but I've not watched it.
Okay, because basically what that show does is it puts two people together, and there's people from sociologists and psychologists and all these people that do, look at their history and stuff, and they put two people together and they're actually legally married, and now that couple has to navigate falling in love and staying in love.
This is tricky, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's so fascinating to me on so many levels, probably because of my coaching background, my psychology background, all this fascination with how the mind works.
Well, this is why I never judge people for what they watch, because people watch things for their own reasons. I mean, there's people out there that just watch incoherent bullshit, that's completely non-relevant to their life. And there's some people who are heavily into anime. I know my partner is, and that's who she is, I just tend to watch pretty much anything. There isn't a lot that I don't watch. I'm shocked that there was 3 films back to back that I've not heard of.
How about Who's That Girl by Madonna, with Madonna? Who's That Girl? You seen that?
No, I've not. No. There is. Some of those films I've not seen at all. I want to throw one at you. You may have seen it. Have you ever seen Muriel's Wedding?
No.
Yeah. At least I got one back.
Wait a minute. Tell who's in it?
Oh shit. It was almost the original version of Mamma Mia, in a way. I'm pretty sure that Mamma Mia was some sort of a built-in sort of weird sort of sequel to it.
Okay, interesting.
It was it's set in Australia. Very good film. Highly recommend it. It's one of Quentin Tarantino's also favorite films. Surprising.
Really?
Yeah.
Whoa.
It's a very surprising one. I randomly I have a gay uncle, and I grew up watching a whole bunch of films myself that were just that I wouldn't normally watch as an adult because I'm just it was one of those. I'd go around then and have a video player, and like nobody else did, and he was rich in comparison to most people.
Yeah.
You know, he was well off in comparison to most people. So it was like he had all these new videos and shit, and whatever. So we'd go around there, but obviously being a gay man, some of those videos were probably in his category range, and so some of them wasn't, there was, but some of them I'd just it'd be working, and I'd be like, what's this one? Let's put this on.
Yeah.
One of them was
Yeah.
Muriel's Wedding. I'm a big fan, huge fan of ABBA.
Oh wow. Okay. Oh yeah. Hey, do you know they're coming out with an album next year? Did you hear that?
Yeah, I have a recent. Again, I know about that because last year I bought a ticket for me and my mum to go and see them because I'm a huge fan, but I don't drive. And we was going to go and see them in Yorkshire. So I bought 2 tickets, one for me, one for her. And then I was like, do I really want to go with my mum? I was like, nah, I'll just give her both tickets. So I'm kind of gutted in a way that I just gave them up. But I just gave it to her, the other one to her boyfriend. I was like, fuck it, man. Hotel room for the night and all that shit. Separate rooms, obviously. But it's like, nah, I'm good. I'm cool. I'll just.
Yeah. What's your favorite ABBA song? Do you have one?
Yeah, well, I'm a big fan of Dancing Queen. It's probably one of my favorites. Just because, again, it was one of the main songs of
Nero's Wedding.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But it's just one of my favorite songs. I occasionally listen to a bit of ABBA before coming on my shows. Like I'll have a little bit of a playlist on while I'm just setting up, and occasionally a lot of stuff like that comes in. A little bit of Bonnie Tyler occasionally.
Oh yeah. Have you heard Cher's album of remakes of ABBA songs?
No, I actually haven't. No,
okay. She just remade a whole album.
I didn't even know she was. I didn't even know she was still going about.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of like Madonna. She's always randomly just hitting up the press. Like every once in a blue moon, there's something really provocative. It's never anything tame.
Yes.
Which is kind of bizarre. Like I couldn't imagine being that sort of big. It's the same thing with like Britney. I think she's just won some sort of case. I believe. I'm not sure.
I think her father stepped down as whatever he was.
Yeah, I'm not sure what his title was, but what a weird way to live. Like, being under that thumb for wow, what would it be now? It's 20 odd years, realistically. It's crazy.
Well, that just goes to show you, even celebrities, like, a lot of people see the 10% of good, and they don't realize the 90% of crap. It's just like an iceberg. When people see, people will see you at a party and talk to you. And obviously we always give off our best front. Oh, I do this and I do that, and I'm currently doing this. That's only 10%.
Yep.
Nobody sees that 90% of crap and struggle that you had to go through and to get to where you're getting to where you are.
Yeah.
Speaking of random pieces of worthless things, I heard that it wasn't an iceberg that the Titanic struck. It was actually called a bluebird, and a bluebird is when an iceberg, when too much water gets on top of the iceberg, what happens is the bottom of the iceberg is smaller and less weight than the top. It actually flips. So the iceberg flips. And when the iceberg flips, there's so much water in the upper part of the iceberg that it's dark. And so the Titanic, they say that's why they couldn't see the iceberg, because it was so dark compared to the other.
Water, it absorbs all the darkness, doesn't it? It doesn't reflect, it just absorbs the dark. Sorry, carry on.
So it was actually, many people say it was what's called a bluebird that the Titanic hit, not an iceberg.
What do you think about the conspiracy behind that? Because there's the conspiracy that there was a different ship that had sunk, and well, they used a different ship apparently. There's a bit of a conspiracy behind it.
Yeah. Do you know, I don't, maybe I'm just wanna, oh, believe it or not, Titanic is another movie I could sit through nonstop.
I love it.
I love
It's a great
Titanic
film.
and The Wizard of Oz. But I don't believe necessarily in any of the conspiracy theories. I do know that, you know, when the ship was built, I think what was it in Belfast, when the ship was built, after, you know, after they lost like almost 100 men building the ship, and after, you know, so much money was spent, the what was it, the rivets that they had to put the sides together, they started to get a little cheap with those rivets. And that's apparently, you know, where they say the downfall was, because when the ship hit the iceberg, it compromised the rivets. And they said if the rivets were top of the line, which they originally were supposed to be, then the iceberg would not have broken those rivets, and the spaces, you know, wouldn't have cracked to the point where water got in. But it's just, to me, it was so amazing that such a big, huge, beautiful ship was built. And plus, you know, I have a background in Ireland, so the fact that it was built in Belfast, my heart is there as well. And it never even made it to its maiden voyage. And it went down, and it was just so it's enthralling. It's so fascinating. Even the fact that the 4 tubes on top, you know, one of them is fake. They just did it for the size. There was also a fire. There was a fire in the below before it hit the iceberg. So we don't know how much of the fire contributed to the sinking or what, but nonetheless, it's a fascinating story. Now, go ahead. I just want to say it's so funny because there's other ships that sink in other ways, but yet they're not as fascinating as the Titanic. And I often wonder why.
Well, I mean, I'm not a big fan of the conspiracy because it take a lot of people to cover that up. Let's be real about it. You know, like hundreds of workers and just.
Oh yeah.
But people like to speculate all kinds of bullshit just because the rich come off the ship doesn't mean there's a conspiracy.
Yeah.
It means they paid their way to get off the boat quicker. You know, that's a lot of what it probably was, as dark as it is to say. But the one thing that always fascinates me is the fact that James Cameron, you know, he's got all that footage of just him going down there himself, and that's what always fascinated me is that, I mean, he's doing it now for Avatar, and he's been doing it for years. He's just got this huge passionate hobby of just, I don't know what he's doing. Well, he's mapping the Mariana Trench or whatever he's been doing for the last 10 years, but you know, the fact that you could go down and go into that with like a little nautical ship, and it's crazy.
Yeah,
look around it all, and
it is fascinating. It's fascinating to see, you know, what was back then and how people lived. You know, what's fascinating to me also is, I don't know if you heard, you know, 100 years before the Titanic was even built, there was a book called Titan.
Yeah.
And like that to me is like, whoa, that is interesting, you know, to me. But speaking of fascinating how people live, like when I'm on these podcasts, I always look like I'm looking at your room, and you have a skull and a gun, and you're, you know, these
stuff.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I'll be on podcasts with people from all over the world, and it's just very interesting to see, you know, what's in their background and how they live, and you know, just what is the average environment like, you know, for the next person.
Yeah, I mean, I've got all sorts of random stuff in here. These are just notes. I've got like a small Banksy picture here. That's my artwork.
Oh, nice.
That's a top hat. Occasionally these just come out. Sometimes things get a bit wild. I've got a drinking horn here. That does get used quite a lot. It's pretty
really?
Yeah, it's pretty potent. I used to do a lot of heavy drugs, but occasionally I'll do some psychedelics, and I'll just whack them in that horn and just have a couple of days just to gain my inner thoughts and just to decompress, and it works wonders. But what I tend to do now is, rather than doing these big wild blowouts with them, is I'll just, you know, have a couple of drinks from it and almost microdose it in a way.
Yeah.
Pour a beer into it, have a swig, and normally I'll just sort of drink the maybe one or two out of it because it gets a bit wild. It's just been used numerous amounts of times, and I'm a big believer in just sort of letting the mind go a bit sometimes. But I don't do anything that's man-made. I'm
Yeah.
a stickler for that because you made it. Like,
Yeah.
could be anything in there.
That's another thing that when I go to schools, I tell the kids, I'll say, listen, and now I don't do any drugs,
No, I'm not an
whatsoever.
advocate. I'm
But
not.
but what I do tell the kids is, even the marijuana that was done back in my day is much different than the marijuana you guys are doing today. It's completely different. It's made different. It's laced with things.
Well,
So,
that's what I
you
was
got to
gonna
be,
say.
yeah, very, very, very careful. Oftentimes, just with one hit of one thing, you're gone
Well, I
permanently.
mean, the problem is I've smoked since I was 13, which
Hmm.
is it's terrible. I'm not a. I got on smoking young because my sisters smoked. I had a lot of social friends that smoked. I got into the wrong circles, and it can happen. And unfortunately, here I am now at the age of 30, still smoking, regretting all of it. You know, all I've learned to do is become more functional. That's all I've learned. I've quit several times. Um, I will be quitting again at some point and mixing things up again, just to get rid of tobacco, because
Yeah.
that's the that's the main thing that just gets you addicted is nicotine. It's terrible. Again, I'm not an advocate for drugs. I think a lot of stuff, in the UK. I mean, you're stateside, so a lot of states are legalizing. We're not yet. But one of the big problems lately, which I know a lot of the younger generation are going to face, and this is why I like to still smoke and talk about things, because I can give a perspective that would be much greater on drugs than what anyone could ever imagine.
Sure, certainly.
like legit is my advice on drugs. I can go through that tenfold, just because I've been there, I've done that, and I can still pretty much I could do it all if I wanted to again, but I wouldn't because it'd be a foolish mistake. Um, but one of the things that people have started to do is grow really crap cannabis and then put a synthetic spice, and it is called spice. It's called K2 in some other countries, and they spray it with this K2,
Yes.
and you can buy spice anyway. You can buy it from a shop. It was when all that synthetic legal cannabis come out.
Hmm.
And it just zombifies you. It fucking annihilates you and trashes you to pieces. But what people are doing is because they know it's so more addictive, and they know that you're going to get more fucked up, and you're not really going to taste the difference. They're just lacing it all. Which
Yeah.
even now, to me, I'm like, that's a bit of a shit one. There's people out there that want to genuinely get, like CBD cannabis.
Yeah.
I smoke quite a lot of CBD mostly, and I get a lot of real beneficial things from that. But there's
Hmm.
people out there that would want to try and get some CBD, and it could be laced with some synthetic spice and just teetotal the whole
Yeah.
system and just annihilate them. And it's kind of, I think there should be a bit more education involved with that, to be quite
Oh,
honest.
most certainly. Yeah, most certainly. I,
But
I, I agree because
I mean,
knowledge is power and it could save lives.
no, absolutely. I mean, that was extremely off topic. Sorry, I just wanted to just briefly get that out there. Mostly about the synthetic cannabis. It was a mental note that I keep putting out there because I'm starting to get a couple of random new listeners, and I'm like, and I know a lot of probably my people that do listen to my show smoke. I'm going to know because that's the market I'm almost half aiming for, and I know a lot of friends that smoke cannabis, and they all listen to me, and there's a lot of people that in the States that do, and a lot of them don't really know about this thing, these little things that keep cropping up that just slip through the nets. Um,
Yeah.
well, I'm not going to end it on the talk of cannabis though, because that's terrible. Considering it's not really that relatable to who you are. Um, let's just talk about this because this was a random thing that I said at the start, and I'd like to know how you become an ordained minister. How did that come about?
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm ministry sort of certified. So basically, what happens is, well, first of all, let me just go back to one thing. When you have a bachelor's degree, in especially in psychology, in religious institutions, you can start counseling
Oh,
coaching, premarital counseling, things like that. So I took all of that experience, all of that knowledge. Also, I included it in. I was born and raised in a very spiritual house. We used to go to church on Wednesdays, Fridays, and twice on Sundays. That's what we did, growing up when I lived home.
I always thought
Uh,
that twice on Sundays thing was like just what people said. I thought that was like, yeah, we go twice on Sundays, and I never knew that was a real thing. People go
well,
twice on Sundays,
so
or is no, or was that like a thing that you was just saying then? I didn't know if that was a.
No, no, no. Now, listen, it depends on the denomination. If you're Baptist or Wesleyan or Lutheran or Protestant, whatever. So I was born and raised Protestant. So we are the ones where, the tongue speaking, demon delivering, jumping up and down, clapping hands. Everybody
Right.
thinks you're on drugs, in church. But when we would go to church on Sunday, twice on Sunday, basically you went at, 9 o'clock in the morning. There was 2 hours of praise and worship. Then there was the sermon for another hour and a half. And then there was closing notes for, 45 minutes. So church was about 3.5, 4 hours twice a day. And what you would do is in between services, the whole church would go to a restaurant, or we would go downstairs under the church and have fellowship hour.
Okay.
So you just basically have coffee and eat and whatever, and then go upstairs if it was under the church, or leave the restaurant, go back to church, and it would start all over again. That's what your Sundays were. On Wednesdays, it was a modified church service, and on Fridays it was just called praise and worship. So you went into church, and for 2 hours it was praise and worship. But that was my childhood. But that's the Protestant faith. Pentecostal. Obviously, when you go into the more Catholic and the Lutherans and things like that, you're in and out within 48 minutes every single Sunday. Once a Sunday, one Sunday, in and out, 48 minutes. You're given your little, what do you call it, church flyer. And something, I respect every denomination. Because here's my thought. For the most part, everybody's trying to get to the center of the plate, to eat what's in the center of the plate. Everybody just has slightly different behavior getting there.
Well, I mean,
And I think as long as your heart is earnest, your behavior is irrelevant.
well, that's the thing is, even then, if you're taking time out of a day that's meant to be relaxing and you're dedicating that day to something else, you're still putting something positive out there in the world.
Yes, you are.
What's wrong with not doing that?
Yes, you
No
are.
matter what race, religion, you're still putting something into the world and contributing in some way.
Yeah, yeah. As long as you don't get hooked up on organized religion rules, I think you have to have the fundamentals of religion, which is treat others as you'd want to be treated. Although, as a life coach, I have a slight thought with that. I always say I'm very cautious about wanting people to treat me the way that they treat themselves, because if somebody has a lot of self-loathe and little self-esteem, I don't want to be treated how you treat yourself. I want to be treated with the respect that I command, that I deserve. Which goes back into another thing that I help people work on, is treating others, is teaching people how to treat you. And we do have to teach people how to treat us, because life doesn't come with a manual, and people are going to treat you what they think is acceptable, and we have to teach people how to treat us.
Well, I mean, this is the same reason that I've just stopped watching random crap and I've just dedicated a bit more time to learning about the way children work and the social interactions that they have at school, mostly. Because
Oh yeah,
you don't get any of that. It's like you
yeah,
said, nature versus nurture earlier on. When you were talking about criminology, I was wanting to do that myself at one point.
it is
Unfortunately,
fascinating.
well, I wanted to do private investigation work, and to do that, you had to learn a little bit of criminology, and there was a whole mess of other stuff. But unfortunately, due to my past being again very turbulent, I just sort of half gave it up, which I completely, well, I regret it in a way, because I could have, well, I kind of learnt everything. I just didn't pass anything, which
Yeah, no,
which kind of sucks, because I could have got at least an accredit, I could have been accredited for it, but again, due to my own moving around and fucking up and just again living a turbulent lifestyle, it just didn't really happen. But I think that everyone should do that. Really, just treat. It's difficult to treat everybody the same way sometimes, because it's like even just a simple. Occasionally, I mean, I'm a stickler for somewhat rude people, and like we'll go out and just hold in a door for someone and they don't say thank you. It's just like, oh, it's a fucking millisecond of time. It's nothing, and it would just be extremely, progressive for everyone to just do that. And if
Yeah.
more
Do you
people,
ever say you're welcome, even if people don't say thank you?
no, I don't. I don't really bother. No, I just, I just keep quiet. I just
Yeah.
normally I just look at whoever I'm with and go.
Yeah.
I just
You know, I
sort of
just want to
shrug my
say real
shoulders.
quick, back to your criminology thing. You know, I wish in a way that we did more trade education, like more on the job training, because you know, some people, Tim, have such a passion, an intuition, and a natural gift for certain fields, but because you don't take oceanography 203,
Yeah.
you know, you can't go in, and that's, you know, sad. I remember, you know, when I was going into therapeutic recreation, I had to take advanced statistics. And I remember telling my college advisor, I want to work with people that are in prison making therapeutic activities for them. They're not ever going to come to me with their math problems. Why do I
Yeah.
have to take advanced statistics? So it's just so sad that so many times people will actually leave an area of study because you're mandated to take, you know, photography or oceanography or advanced this or that, which you're never going to apply.
I'd
So
imagine
I
that
really
you
wish
would
there was more
have.
on the job
I'd imagine
training.
that
Go
you
ahead.
would have needed that to not categorize people, but some of that you would have to do. I don't know what advanced statistics really entails. I don't know what the scope of it would be, but I'd imagine that at the end of it, it would give you a bit of a better understanding of not cat. I don't know. In terms of applying it that way, I'd imagine you'd be able to create a better pie chart of people and where they'd fall into sort of different categories. And I'd imagine anyway. That's what I'd like to
Yes,
think it would
and
be.
you're right. And most certainly, listen, you know, knowledge is power, and the more you know, the further you go. Absolutely. But here's my thing. If I'm if I'm going to be prevented from going into a field because of some requirement that's going to be hard for me to maintain, now you've just stripped the world of someone that could have made a huge dent in it in a positive way because
Yeah.
they couldn't, you know, do A, B, and C, some of these Mickey Mouse things. And another thing too is in any job, you collaborate. So how about, you know, if I'm going to be on a job, I will work with the brain and I'll work with the mind and I'll work on devising these activities. And then the next person that's good at statistics in their own field, let's all collaborate on this. But I just think, and I did have a cousin who wanted to go into, what did he want to go into? Meteorology. That's what he wanted to do. He wanted to go to meteorology, but he had to take some ridiculous prerequisites that he had no interest in. And because he had no interest in then these prerequisites that he was never going to need on the job, he failed these prerequisites. So he wound up having to change his area of study. So I understand the necessity. I get it. Absolutely. But we could be taking a lot of brilliant people out of fields that would make a dent in the world for some reasons that really shouldn't be reasons.
Well, what the problem anyway with that is you can still study it irregardless. But you're just not going to get paid for it. That's the real problem. You can sit there. You could be the best doctor in the world in principle, but you could sit there and physically you could, but you're never going to get paid for it.
But you know something.
Qualification.
Let me tell you something. Do you ever hear the Green River Killer?
Ooh, that really does ring a bell.
Okay. Anyways, okay. So, who was the other guy? Ted. Who was the killer? Ted.
Ted Bundy.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So listen. So the Green River Killer, he kept, killing these women. And
yeah.
Okay. And they could not catch him. They could not catch him. Years went by. They could not catch him. Do you know what they did, Tim? They went to prison and visited Ted Bundy and said, Ted, this is who we have. Can you help us? And you know what Ted did? He said, this is what I would do. The investigators did that. and they immediately caught
Yep.
the Green River Killer.
Yeah, I remember.
This is what
I
I'm
remember
saying.
now.
Ted Bundy never took all these prerequisites and did this. So sometimes people with brilliant minds that could make a dent in the world, they never go into a field because maybe they can't pass a stupid course that they should have never been mandated to take in the first place.
I mean, like I was saying though, I mean, you can still do it at home, a lot of the time, and it's so crappy that you have to pay. I mean, the problem is nowadays with YouTube and everything else, and you can pretty much bootleg anything online.
Oh yeah,
Realistically, you can get courses online, you can get anything online. But like I say, there's just no accreditation. You don't get accredited. There's no payroll at the end of it. But it goes to show in this world that you can make it's crappy that you have to get, like I say, you have to get all of this if you want to know one specific subject,
yeah.
or if you want to go into that one specific industry. I mean, one of my biggest regrets nowadays is the fact that when I was a school dropout and I went into college, the only thing that I could do was media studies, which I dropped out from anyway. And then nowadays I'm like, that would be very applicable to my life. All of that stuff that I could have learned now that I'm podcasting, what knowledge did I lose? Sometimes there's moments in your life that you go, oh, you have to kick yourself in the head, realistically.
I agree. And you know something, as I said a couple of times, knowledge is power, because, for instance, I used to teach special ed for many years, and special ed students have what's called an IEP. And what an IEP is an individualized education plan. And so with every child, I would make an IEP because every child learns differently. So I would make an individualized education plan for that child. Well, now that I'm coaching, Tim, now that I'm working with people that are going through betrayal trauma, what I have devised is what's called an IHP, and that's an individualized healing plan. So what I do is I ask people everything from what is your love language? What is your attachment style? And if people don't know, I give them a test, whatever. I ask them, what hand do you write with? I ask them, where in your sibling line do you fall? Are you a first child? And here's the reason why is because, yes, betrayal affects everybody and trauma affects everybody, but how people deal with it is completely different based on the individual that they are. And I'll give you a quick example. I don't know if you're familiar with the love languages, but there's 5 love languages. And one of them, let's just say, is physical touch. That's a love language, right? Yeah. So you speak, so you feel love when somebody's physically touching you, right? Okay, now let's just hypothetically speaking, say you found out your significant other was living a double life, right? And cheating on you. Okay. Now, if you found out that the person you were with went on a few dates with somebody, but wasn't necessarily physical, that's still going to hurt you. That's going to hurt you a lot. But if you found out they were sexually involved, now they're physical, now it's going to hurt you on a much deeper level.
Yep.
And same thing with, let's just say somebody was words of affirmation, where words really mean something to somebody. If you found out your significant other just had a lunchtime tryst, don't get me wrong, it's still going to hurt like hell. It's still going to kill you. But it's a lot different than if you found endless love letters to that person, telling them that you want to run off and marry them, and you see their future in their eyes, because those words affect you because you're a words person. So I don't want to really deal with people's healing. I want to deal with people's individual trauma plan that I've devised for them, because everybody heals individually.
That's a very good way to look at it. I mean, because that's again, like I said earlier, there's so many variables. We're all individuals. There's a hell of a lot that you can just put it all down. There's probably about, I don't know, at least 1 million people that have maybe gone through the same traumatic experience I have to some degree.
Absolutely,
probably way more.
Yeah.
But even then, there's so many different variables along that journey. The day didn't start the same in terms of. Like us, just as an example of my meeting my first partner. That could have gone completely different. Someone could have had that same path, and it probably has happened to a lot of people, I'd imagine, just different years. There's the variables right away. When did that person find out? 1 year, 2 years, 4 years? Excuse me. How long did they raise a child for? 10 years? How long did they meet them for? How long were they together? What was their relationship like? You know, there's so much. What was their individual childhoods like before they met? You know, there's so much you can put to it that you
Oh,
can't even
yeah.
that you can't even imagine. It's just I like to think that there is a small blueprint to life that I do think comes along with trauma. I think there's people out there that can almost second guess things just because they've lived so many different lives and been so many different people and they've met so many different faces that they can just easily go, I've been through this scenario 3 times. This is how this might play out. I think there's people like that. And there's like I think there is a legitimate sort of blueprint to life. But
well, and a lot of times
it's
that's
almost
why
impossible to map because of the variables. It's impossible.
yeah, no, absolutely. That, well, that's why, I have a saying is sometimes your heart gets broken, but in the meantime, your eyes get fixed because different parts of your life, you're going to realize red flags are not red flags, they're deal breakers. Yeah. So we do grow and we do learn and our eyes do get open. The trick is to make sure our eyes are open without getting jaded, because so many people are walking around jaded today.
I heard a quote, I think it was on a cartoon, saying if you wear rose-colored glasses, all flags are red flags. You know, I think that was on a cartoon, by the way. Pulled that right from my brain. I'm not even sure if the quote was right. I think it was. Listen, we're on like an hour 50, my friend. It's been very, very fun talking to you, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. I also need to get some food. It's dinner time here, and I'm sure it's probably about lunchtime for you.
Yeah.
But listen, this has been very, very fun talking to you. It's been a very fun show. Where can people follow you? Where can people check you out?
My website, I would like to think, is relatively easy. It's mrjrelationshipcoach.com. Right from there, you get links to, my free YouTube videos, free resources, all kinds of information about me, my social media, from Instagram, Facebook, you name it. So very easy, mrjrelationshipcoach.com.
I'd highly recommend checking that out, people, because anywhere with free resources that good, and they are good. Even just talking to this man for an hour and 50 has been given me a lot of benefits. I've got a lot to take away from this conversation. Well, listen, this has been a very, very fun show. We've been here today with Mr. J, and I'll catch you next time, people. Thank you very much.
Thank you.